I have chosen to visualize a data set that quantifies each San Francisco neighborhood's community resiliency based on 36 indicators from categories such as hazards, housing, economy, and health. The data was part of a report called the San Francisco Climate and Health Profile, which links climate change projections to the health outcomes that are associated with those changes. The community resiliency indicators allow us to identify populations and locations that are most vulnerable to these health outcomes. I found the original dataset on SF Open Data, but it is also available through the Climate and Health Program at the SF Department of Public Health. The only transformation I performed on the dataset was to change null values where there wasn't enough data to provide conclusive results to NAs. The dataset contains 36 numeric indicators from 9 different categories. Columns in the dataset include percent of land area in liquefaction or landslide zones, percent of area in high air toxicity zones, violent crime rate, percent citizens, percent high school graduates, percent overcrowding, percent employed, preventable hospitalization rate, and other demographics. These are then aggregated by category to provide scores from 1 to 5 for each of these. My original sketch of the project included 3 charts in one dashboard. I planned to implement a map view of San Francisco to visualize several columns of the data. Since the data is by San Francisco neighborhood, I wanted to have a chloropleth map that shaded neighborhoods by a user's chosen column as a drop-down filtering menu. I also planned on implementing a bubble chart showing several of the hazard risk columns with the categorical hazard score as the color of the bubbles and a tooltip to show details on demand. Lastly, I planned for a small multiples bar chart where each bar would be one neighborhood and each individual chart would show a different column of the data. The tooltip here would show details on demand for the neighborhood hovered over across all bar charts. I also hope to implement some interactivity between charts to allow dashboard functionality. Here is my visualization prototype. As you can see, I have implemented the map chart, bubble chart, small multiples bar chart, and I've also added a parallel coordinates chart. For the map chart, I have implemented filtering via a drop-down menu and tooltips as well. When I change the metric being viewed in the map, it changes the color of the shading for the neighborhoods. The tooltip here allows the user to hover over to see which neighborhood it is, as well as what metric is being viewed and the value for that metric. For the bubble chart, I've implemented a tooltip that shows the neighborhood for the hovered over bubble, as well as the hazard score, which is in color, and the values for size and X and Y axes. For the small multiples bar chart, I used color to represent the resiliency score from 1 to 5, with darker being more resilient neighborhoods. Then, when a user hovers over a bar, it shows the neighborhood, all the values for all 5 charts, as well as the resiliency score. All neighborhoods with a different resiliency score than the current neighborhood fade away, allowing a user to compare metrics across similar resiliency scores. Lastly, the parallel coordinates chart shows different scores from 1 to 5 for the categories in the dataset. The color is overall resiliency rank, with red being lower scores or less resilient locations, and green being more resilient locations. When the user hovers over a neighborhood, all other neighborhoods fade while still showing the overall context, which allows the user to view one neighborhood at a time to see its scores. Originally, I planned to have the map, bubble, and small multiples bar chart be one large dashboard. Unfortunately, in order to really see the detail in these visualizations, they needed to be larger, and thus I was forced to put the small multiples bar chart below these other two. That being said, I would still like to implement some interchart interactivity, something such as when I click on one of the neighborhoods in the map, it filters out that neighborhood on the map as well as on the bubble chart. So for example, if I clicked on South of Market, all the other neighborhoods over here would fade away, and all the neighborhoods that are not south of Market on the bubble chart would fade away so that you could actually view which bubble corresponds to south of Market.